So whether you're working Zillow leads that are requesting a showing for a specific property and they're waiting for a call back from you to confirm the appointment, or you're working leads from a colder source such as a list of names, or maybe they just clicked on your Facebook ad and got their information captured, but they're not necessarily expecting a call from anybody, eventually you're going to end up on the phone with the lead, and you're going to want to know what sort of questions should you be asking. What kind of information should you be looking for as a real estate agent trying to get business from this person? And how should the call be structured to be most effective? And that's what I want to talk to you about today, how I structure my calls to try to get as much information as possible and leave a good impression on these leads. So no matter where the lead is from, whether it's a personal referral or an internet lead or whatever, there's a few different goals and beats that I want to hit on the phone call to be able to get all the information that I need as somebody who's trying to help this person. So number one, I want to understand their time frame. Number two, I want to figure out, are they qualified to get a loan right now? If they want to move right now, or what is stopping them from getting a loan? Number three is to provide a solution for whatever problems they just described to me in that last point. And then lastly, I want to set up follow-up and expectations of follow-up on the lead's end, so that way they're not caught off guard when I try to continue communications between us over the next weeks and months or however long it is before they are actually ready to buy a house. So at the start of the call, the very first question I ask is, how long do you have before you need to be moved into a house? And that's going to tell me a couple of things. Number one, it's going to tell me how long do they think that it's going to be before they had to move into a house. Sometimes that might not actually align with reality, but it helps me understand their mindset. So if they tell me that they just signed a new lease and they're not going to be able to move for an entire year, well, then I know that I'm not going to even really be talking about showings or anything like that. We're going to have a conversation about longer term goals, and here's where you got to be in a year. In cases like that, I always let them know that most people I speak to aren't ready to buy a house for about 6 months or a year after we have this initial conversation. So just so you know, I'm always here as a resource between now and then. So that way, if you have any questions along the way, before things get really serious, you can always call on me for help. And that's sort of what I was talking about earlier, sets expectations for a follow-up, but we'll hit more on that later on. Now, you might end up with somebody who is on the complete opposite side of the spectrum. So they might say that my lease is about to end and I do not want to sign another lease, so I got to move in the next 2 or 3 months, otherwise I'm not going to have a place to live. In that case, you know that they're much more urgent. Hopefully, they're ready to take action much quicker, but you got to convey to them that whatever steps we're going to talk about in this next point for what you need to do to be able to get approved, you got to get started right now. There is no time to waste. I always work backwards to show them sort of what a timeline would look like in the best case scenario. If they say, I got to move by June 1st, well, I let them know that, just so you know, it does take 30 to 45 days from when you find a house to be able to close. So if June 1st is the last possible day that you can close on a house, then you're going to be looking at probably April 15th as the deadline for when you definitely need to have found a house and got an offer accepted. And we're going to need at least 2 weeks to a month, or possibly even more if the time is available, to be looking at houses, so that way you don't feel rushed to find a house where you aren't necessarily the most happy with it that you could be. And that lets them know that, even though they might think that 3 months is plenty of time to find a house, because, if they've been renting, you can find a place to rent and move in within a couple of weeks. Buying a house takes a little bit more time than that, and we really got to get started to make this work. So from there, I always ask them, so since we got to get started, or, whatever the timeline is, really the question is the same. What is stopping you from getting approved right now? Or what do you think your biggest hurdles are between getting approved? And if they don't know, I let them know that the biggest things that people normally say is either cash to close or down payment. So where do you think you are, cash to close or credit score, I mean. So where are you at credit-wise? And they'll tell me. In a lot of cases, it's not enough, but hopefully it's at least, 620, and that way we know that they don't really got to worry about that too much, and maybe it's just a cash to close issue. And then I ask them the other question, how much cash do you have saved up in order to buy a house? And they tell me. I make sure that I don't let them know how much money is needed right away. I just ask them straight up, how much money do you have? And then I give them their options from there. In most cases, one of those two is going to be lacking. It's very rare that I have somebody from an internet lead that has like a proper amount of cash to close where we're not going to need any kind of solutions with a downside. Or if they do, they probably don't have the credit. So one of those things needs to be fixed. But that gives you a very good opportunity to kind of shed some knowledge on them and then sort of let them know that you're there to help. Because if they say that they need help with the cash to close, then I say, well, that's good. I actually have a lot of options to help you out. So I explain to them, down payment assistance programs that the lenders can offer them. I explain the seller pay closing cost possibility. But it's also important to make sure that they know the downsides of both of those things. Neither of those things come without a cost. If you're doing the down payment assistance, that money's going to have to be paid back eventually, and even one variant of the down payment assistance is going to significantly lower the amount of money that they're approved for, but the payment's still going to stay just as high. So I try to make them not use that, but seller pay closing costs is a good way to get closing costs paid without having to pay that money back. But this is a very tough market right now, so it is going to be harder for you to get an offer accepted if you are using seller pay closing costs in order to close the gap of what you don't have. And explain those options to them clearly. It sort of gets them talking about writing an offer with you and lets them know that you have options for them and you're going to be able to help them come up with money that they thought they were going to have to save up themselves. But make sure that you set the expectations that they do come with downsides, okay? Same thing with credit score. You let them know what they need for a credit score. Sometimes people don't realize that 620 is all you need for an FHA loan, but then explain to them the difference between an FHA loan and a conventional. What kind of credit do they need for down payment assistance, kind of going off of what you already explained to them with the cash to close issue, and just give them a full idea. And it's going to be a lot of information you're going to pour on them, but I always let them know that there is a lot of information I just gave you, but if you ever have any questions about that stuff again, just give me a call and I can re-explain anything. But it just it's better to give them more information so that way they know that you have a lot more information than they really even understand, than not giving them any information and just calling them only to set a showing and they feel like they didn't really learn anything from you. So moving on from that, you've identified the problems and you discussed the solutions to those problems. Now you're going to want to sort of bring the phone call to a close. See if they have any other questions, answer any questions that they might have. But again, the last goal is to set up a follow-up expectation. So that way they know that you are going to be speaking to them in the future and they're not going to be caught off guard when they see your name pop up on the phone. So here's how you set proper follow-up expectation. So number one, base it off of their time frame. If they say, I got to move in 3 months, then you're going to say, well, I'll talk to you tomorrow. But if they say that I got to move in a year, then maybe we can dial that back to probably about once a month is going to be efficient, or even once every 2 months, just to check in where they're at with whatever the solution is. Hey, where's your credit at? Are you saving that money that you got to save? Do you have any other questions? Cool, I'll talk to you next month. And then the big thing is, what is the best time to hand off to a lender? I think that whenever you possibly can, try to get them to speak to a lender, okay? Because whether their issue is down payment or credit score, or even if they think that they have everything they need, they have enough down payment, they have enough credit score, I always let them know that, well, if Credit Karma says you have a 680 credit score, it could be more, it could be less. And, that's where you got to be. You don't want to be surprised when the time comes to actually buy a house that you actually aren't where you thought you were at credit-wise. Or maybe they have cash that's not usable. There's all kinds of things that, in most cases, people say one thing about their finances, but then something comes up that they just didn't think of, or you didn't think of as a real estate agent because, it's not really your job to know all the ins and outs. You're just trying to provide basic information. So I always let them know whenever we're setting goals for where they have to be and whatever amount of time they want to be there, it's always a good idea to know where you actually are now before you set goals for where you want to be. So it's always good to reach out to a lender. They're a great resource to give you more information on some of the things that we already touched on, let you know exactly where you are right now. And then all along the way, we're going to be able to give you assistance from, both angles, from the house angle on my side and then from the numbers angle on the lender's side. And that really establishes early on that you are all a part of a team, and that allows you as the real estate agent to keep an eye on things from another angle. Whether it is them, they're communicating with either you or the lender, you can always speak to the lender. Hey, what'd you guys talk about? How's it looking with them? And that way, you can keep an eye on how things are on the lending side of things, which is very important to the service you provide, without actually having to give them a call and have them reiterate themselves or talk about their finances to you when they already were doing that to the lender. But also, if they end up, stop responding, or, they say they're going to give the lender a call and they actually don't, it lets you know right away, are they lying to you, or are they sort of trying to ghost you in a way? If you're trying to re-engage a lead, if they already had spoken to the lender, you can always say, hey, I tried giving so-and-so a call a couple of times. Can you maybe give them a call this time and see if they answer you? It's always great to establish connections to the lender as well, so you can sort of attack things from two different angles. So the last thing I do to establish a good follow-up is I try to put them on a home search no matter how far off they are. I always let them know that, okay, well, if you're not moving for 6 months, then just let me know sort of what you think you're going to look for, and that way I can start sending you houses right now, and let me know what houses you really like and what ones you really don't like, and then by the time that we're actually ready to start looking, I will have known really what you like and what you don't, and so when we're actually getting out there looking at houses, we're only looking at houses that you like, and we're not wasting time on the ones that you told me that you don't like. But what that really does, in addition to just sending them houses, every day that house search goes to their email, so they're seeing my name every single day, all the houses they're looking at, and they're seeing my number and my face. And also on my end of things, on the MLS that I use, I see that like every day it shows me who is looking at the listings, what ones are they favoriting, and if you're working with somebody that every day they're looking at listings and that it's really at the top of their mind, they're seeing houses every day, super active, looking at pictures, that's a great sign that they are motivated to move still. But then if that person sort of falls off and stops looking at the emails or never opens up the emails in the first place, then you know that they probably aren't as motivated. It just helps you gauge whether or not they're going to be doing what they need to do to be able to get approved. So after that, just follow up however you said you were going to follow up, once a month, or have them speak to the lender. If they got to move right away, say, call this guy today, and then tomorrow all three of us will talk and get you started and see where you're at. And then from there, it should just be pretty natural. You should have spoke to them for anywhere between 15 and 30 minutes at this point, and they really know what you know a lot about them, and it should be pretty natural to get them on the phone the second time without having to worry about, what are you supposed to say. It should just come naturally. So I hope this helped, and I'll probably make more videos like this in the future about how I work leads and how I try to convert them. My methods certainly aren't going to be perfect, but I hope this was educational for somebody that's like a complete beginner.